welcome back everyone to another Testhand video. Today we're going to be featuring our Krawler Subterror hybrid deck. This particular deck might seem a bit repetitive for the Testhands, but I think it will be a bit different given that the Subterrors do add quite a bit of a difference here. I just don't know if it's going to work for opening hands. It typically works differently in the later hands. So if the situation comes up when we actually draw into some of our new Subterror add-ins, then I'll explain how the deck actually interacts with each other. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. Alright, so in this situation we do actually have a non-Krawler hand, so this is kind of like bad obviously, but I guess it's okay. It's kind of an extension of the previous Testhand video. Consider it a part 2 in the case that we actually just get a pure Krawler hand, but in this case it's pretty simple. You set the receptor so that we could actually search, we could activate this making our opponent afraid, and we also have the World Legacy pawns to set as well, allowing us to go for a pretty decent play here. But given that this is a relatively easy and simplified hand for you guys to actually already know how it works, then we're just going to move on. Alright, so slightly different here, we actually have our first Krawler. So in this situation we do have the World Legacy Sorrow, so we could easily just set it. It's not going to be active at the meantime, but for the time being we'll just leave it there as a way to scare our opponents off. At the same time we do have a World Legacy's Mind Meld, definitely a very powerful card, but of course it only acts when the opponent actually flips something up here. So that's kind of unfortunate that we don't have a trigger to flip up our monsters. So in this case the question is, which one of these monsters do you actually want to bring out? Now in this situation Spine does seem like the optimal option. However, I actually would go with the Subterror Guru, simply because Guru can actually search for more cards, thinning off our deck by searching for either Fiendus or any of our trap cards that we are actually playing in the deck itself. And at the same time, he is a decent body as well, so don't just discount it for what it is definitely still a viable option. However, this is a relatively simple hand that doesn't really need further explanation, so let's move on. Alright, so this hand is definitely a lot better. So in this case we actually do have the Guru, but the scary thing is we also have the World Legacy pawns, which actually makes us in quite a good situation here. Unfortunately we don't have that optimal 3-card opener where we have a Spine, a Mind Meld and the pawns, and if anything, if we have the field spell Shadows as well, then that would be the best hand ever. But this is okay considering that we do actually have a Guru. Keep in mind that if your opponent is playing some kind of hand trap heavy deck, in this case you might know based off playing game 2, in that case you would not set the Guru and you'd probably go for the Spine instead, or even the Receptor. But you know, as you say, if the opponent is playing a hand trap heavy deck where you do know actually that they have Ash, then Guru and Receptor won't actually be the best option here. But for the time being, this is a somewhat decent hand, but it's not anything amazing that we have to go into full detail with. Alright, so a little bit of a different situation here. We could still work things off here. So we have a World Legacy in Shadow, we can activate it right away, that's fine. Or you can keep it in hand first and let's just go with the Survivor. So we'll activate Survivor, excavate the top 5. We see pawns, definitely a very good card here. Alright, excellent. So in this case we already have Glyle, we already have Axon, so we could get rid of pretty much all of these and we'll get the World Legacy Pawns. Pawns is an amazing good card, so we're just going to set this of course, and we're going to activate the Shadow, making our opponents afraid. In this case, depending on what you know from your opponents, you're going to do something and set one of these. Of course Glyle won't really work anyway, so in this situation you have the Axon to set, potentially destroying what your opponent has. Of course, on your next turn you could also activate the Mind Control, so I think you have a pretty good situation here. Now, just a hypothetical, I'm going to turn over the next card and see what we get. We get a Deus Ex Krawler. This could actually be decent. If your opponent fails to get over this, then you could actually do some other things later on as well, because on your next turn, let's assume that the opponent actually doesn't destroy this because of its big beat stick anyway, or they're just too afraid, then you could use World Legacy's Shadow's effect in your following turn and go for the Glial to special summon, and then just tribute both of them to set the Deus Ex Krawler, which would be a powerful effect because you also have the World Legacy pawns at the ready. Alright, so unlike the previous test hand video where I actually focused more on going first, I'm going to focus more on going second in this just to give it a more even chance of demonstration here. So let's begin. Right now we actually only have the Guru, which is perfectly fine of course, but we can activate the Shadow, that's fine there. We could also just set the Mind Meld whenever we need to later on in the turn, but we do actually have a Mind Control, so in the situation that you actually want to just take one of your opponent's monsters, that's totally okay, and use it as a link material, because you could go for a link 3 in this case. You could go Mind Control to either bait out your opponent's negate, or you could take their monsters, and in that case you could normal summon one of your crawlers and then use your World Legacy and Shadow to special summon out the other and go for a really nice link play, which I think that's not too bad. If you want to go for a more slower play, then just set the Guru and you could search, or set the Spine if you know that your opponent might have an Ash, given that you might have played against them in game 1. And of course Receptor will also be quite an amazing card as well to help you search for whatever crawlers you need. But as you can see here, there's not much of a difference. The main point is that we have the Krawler, the Subterror Guru, that will search for the Subterror Fiendess, in which case we get this extra negate, which is definitely quite nice. And keep in mind, we also have the Mind Meld for the following turn, so don't hesitate to go all in. Alright, not bad for a hand here. We have the World Legacy and Shadow, so keep in mind we can bring out 2 crawlers, so in this case you could think about Dendrite or Receptor, whichever one you want. I think what I'll do is I'll actually use this to special summon out the Dendrite, and they'll just know that, oh, it's just a card you'll mill. So that's just fine, we could set that. The opponent will know about this, but we could also just set the Receptor as well, and that will allow us to search for a potential Glial, in which case we would already have resources in the grave ready to go. In this situation, you could also just search up the Ranvier with the Receptor, and that would also be a good choice as well. But with this situation, you have the Mind Control, so you could force out a negate from your opponent so that they could expend their resources. You have Reversal Beetle, so you always have a backup monster for the following turn and whatever you search for here. But at the same time, you also have the Subterror Succession. This card's also acting as a great searcher because you could set it, and keep in mind, these guys, I mean, they don't have the best defense for this one, neither does this, so that's kind of unfortunate, but you do get the boost from the World Legacy and Shadow, so whatever happens, let's say the opponent only attacks 1, on your following turn you can flip one of them up, activate their effects, that's fine of course, and then you could activate the Subterror Succession, sending one to the grave to search for another. It's kind of a great way to actually deck thin for the deck, accelerating it a bit. It's hard to demonstrate in this because we're not actually playing a proper game, we're only showing a test hand demonstration, but what I want to advocate is that this particular card will really speed up the deck and get cards to your graveyard as quickly as possible as resources for when you search for Glial, and Glial can actually just special summon them from the graveyard, going for your further plays of course. So it makes the deck a lot faster so that you could actually go for your link plays and go for the win much faster compared to the regular crawlers, which might stall for with the win. But in this case, it still obtains that same purpose, only at a faster rate. Alright, so this particular hand is very interesting because we actually have I don't know, I think this would make for a pretty fun interaction. So let me just explain to this and how significant it might be. So we have here the Krawler spine, we set it of course, and it acts as a really good defense on its own already, and that's really amazing. Now this is more so you preparing for the long run and not for the immediate reaction here, and that's kind of common for crawlers, so don't worry about that. But keep in mind, right here we could set the sorrow, so it doesn't matter. We have 2 successions, which is definitely very nice. Keep in mind, succession also resets itself. A lot of people don't remember that, but because it resets itself, you kind of have this infinite resource, so you don't have to worry about things. These 2 will just act as a bluff for your opponent anyway. But let's say this. So on your opponent's turn now, you end your turn at this, your opponent goes and they attack into this. Now the good thing about spine is that it is a 2100 beat stick, or 2100 defense, which makes it a really good wall to prevent your opponent from getting through, you know? So in the situation where they're going for a bit more of the slow run and they're just testing out an attack, they won't be able to get through this, right? In that case, what you do is spine will obviously activate its effect, triggering off on your opponent. What you could then do is also just activate the succession, sending this to the graveyard to search for another one from your deck, and then on your next turn you set the Glial, and then you're ready to go again to bring back the spine in face down defense. And it's going to be an infinite cycle, considering the fact that we already have 2 Glials on the hand ready to go, so that is definitely really nice. Now when I was actually playing this particular hand, or this particular deck itself, against one of my friends who was playing the Witchcrafter deck, we had this really fun interaction where we ended up having a total of 6 or 7 chain links, which was pretty insane. Basically what he did was he declared an attack first, and I flipped this up and activated my effect to destroy one of his cards. In that particular manner, what he did was he activated one of his effects. I think it was Vere's effect, where she was able, or he used Vere's effect to negate this. But in response to this, he activated an effect in response to destroy this, but at the same time he then chained another effect which allowed Vere to destroy spine, and then from there, that's chain link 3 I believe. From there I activated the Subterror succession in response to spine, so I could send it first and then get my search. On top of that, he had like a few other cards to chain as well, and I had my own cards as well. I think there was an interaction with one of the cards in his grave, so I had a cord by the grave as well. And yeah, it was just really fun, really crazy, going for a 6 or 7 chain link combo there, and it was just a back and forth. It was really fun. You know, it's just one thing that you don't really realize when you're doing a test hand, but in an actual game it becomes incredibly interesting seeing how this deck actually flows and interacts with every other deck out there as well. Alright, so that was pretty much it for today's test hand video. I hope you guys actually enjoyed that. It felt more so like a part 2 to the first test hand video that I did, simply because the combos did seem a bit of a follow-up from the previous one, only in this case we did have a few crawlers mixed in with the Subterrors, which gave a few more interactions. I thought I would do more explanation into the long game and how things would actually interact later on. So I hope you guys actually found my experiences playing with this deck and what I gave in detail as a means for you guys to actually implement in your own playstyle when using this particular build. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you guys enjoyed that, definitely leave a thumbs up and share this video for anyone who actually might be interested in how this deck might actually work with this hybrid variant. And of course, don't forget to subscribe as well for more videos like this. But that being said, I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you next time.